At the very end of last year, Ruger introduced a new version of the LCP chambered in .22 long rifle. Officially, it's called the Light Rack LCP-2. If you followed my pocket pistol series, then it's no surprise that I think this is a really great idea. Ruger's marketing for this gun seems to be taking the approach that you should use the .22 LCP as a training gun for your .380 LCP. Well, maybe, but I think when we get into the realm of 12-ounce pocket pistols carried for self-defense, something chambered in .22 makes a lot of sense. But I'll get back to that in a minute. First, let's look at the basic specs for this gun. On paper, it's really not much different from the .380 LCP-2. It's got a 2.75-inch barrel. It's a little bit heavier than the .380, but when it's fully loaded, it's actually lighter at 12.3 ounces. The magazine capacity is 10 rounds of .22 long rifle. The .380 is only 6+1. The mag does stick out of the bottom of the grip a little, but it's not really any longer than the finger extension on the .380 LCP. The very back of the slide has these little fins that are just a tiny bit wider than the rest of the slide. It makes it a little bit easier to get a grip on the slide when you're racking it, which is where they get the name Light Rack. Otherwise, these two guns are basically the same. They're both single action only with a lot of take up in the trigger and a somewhat heavy brake. They've got the same grip texture, the same black fixed sights, which are actually pretty good as far as pocket pistol sights go. They're a decent size and they have a snag-free profile. And like always, I have painted the front orange on both of them. There is one other difference actually. The .22 LCP comes with a manual safety lever. It's over here on the left side of the frame only. The rear position is safe and then you press it forward to fire. Most pistols being made today in this size class are of course chambered for .380. Almost all of them actually. Back when I did my video on the best .22s for concealed carry, I mentioned that there are really only two truly pocket-sized .22 long rifle semi-autos in current production. The Beretta 21A Bobcat and the Taurus PT-22. Now, the Taurus doesn't really deserve a second look, but the Beretta, I actually really dig this gun. It's a DASA, which is my favorite type of action, even though the double action is pretty heavy. It's got the tip-up barrel feature, and I mean, come on, who doesn't love that? Beretta is coming out with a threaded barrel version later this year, and I plan to be first in line. I will stick a set of laser grips on it and a can and blast tree rats in my backyard all day. But would I carry a 21A? Probably not. The sights are lousy, and the grips on this thing are just massive. I mean, look at that. It's like the width of two LCPs, and you only get 7 rounds in the magazine instead of 10. So as far as I'm concerned, the LCP easily wins the title for the best itty-bitty .22 pocket pistol. For the person who is new to concealed carry or who doesn't necessarily want shooting to be their new hobby, a gun of this size doesn't really require any serious changes to their wardrobe or lifestyle, and they can practice with it occasionally without being intimidated. For more experienced shooters, the LCP is the perfect candidate to fill that role of the underwear gun. That's the gun you have on you all the time when you can't or don't want to carry around a real gun. And this is probably a good place for me to throw in a plug for Discreet Carry Concepts. They make these low-profile metal clips that can replace the clip that your holster came with. And no, I'm not being paid to say this. I just think this is a really good product that could be a real game changer for a lot of people. A lot of my friends have been raving about these things for a long time, and I'm finally just getting around to trying them out, and I'm totally sold. The clips have an incredible amount of clamping force, and that means you can attach them to your waistband without a belt and they won't come off. So if you're just wearing gym shorts or sweatpants or yoga pants, swim trunks, whatever, you can clip this to your waistband and the holster is going to stay put. Now, I'm not saying your pants are going to necessarily stay up if the gun is too heavy, but if you draw the gun, the holster is not going to come out with it. This holster is a DeSantis King Tuck. It's a pretty unremarkable holster on its own, but with this clip, it's something I wouldn't mind using on a daily basis. I think the combo of a little Kydex holster and a discreet carry clip is a perfect match for something like the little LCP. You can just stick it in whatever you're wearing and you don't have to worry about it. Okay, so back to the gun. The objections to carrying around a gun like this are so loud I can hear them already. But Chris, some of you are going to say, trusting your life to a .22 is for old ladies and morons. You are going to get people killed with this advice. I have already gone over at great length the merits of .22 as a self-defense cartridge in other videos. I am not going to rehash all of that now, But for our discussion today about the LCP, I'll just bring up two relevant points. First, 22 is really not all that bad ballistically, especially when you compare it to other small pistol calibers like 380. Even looking at reports from real-world shootings, a few rounds of 22 into some important body parts tends to make a pretty compelling argument. Now, would I rather depend on a high-quality expanding 9mm hollow point? Of course, but they don't make a 9mm this small, and if they did, I wouldn't want to shoot it. The second point is that most people really suck at shooting pocket 380s, and people who can shoot them reasonably well can shoot a 22 much, much better. In the context of a carry gun, shooting it well means you can draw the gun and get 2 or more high center chest hits in a short amount of time. To really drive home the point, let's take a look at the bill drill. That's where you draw and fire 6 shots into the center of an IDPA or a USPSA cardboard silhouette at 7 yards. Now for me, on a good day with a full-size 9mm, I can clean this drill in about 2.3-ish seconds. Now that's fairly respectable, but it's not going to win me any awards. Obviously, I'm going to be a little bit slower on the draw with the LCP because it's just smaller, it's harder to grab onto, and the sights are harder to see. But let's see what I can do with the 380 version of the LCP2 and an appendix-style holster on the bill drill. After I got warmed up with a few mags, I tried the bill drill 3 times. I dropped 1 shot on this first run with a time of 4.04 seconds. On my second try, I cleaned it at 3.99 seconds. My draw time is consistently right at 1.5 seconds. My third run was clean at 4.25 seconds. That's about as fast as I can go with this gun and be reasonably sure that I'm going to hit what I'm aiming at. Now let's take a look at how I did with the 22 LCP. Same draw speed, right around 1.5 seconds, but a much faster overall time, 2.79 seconds on this first run. My second run was a little faster at 2.68 seconds, and on my third run, I threw the last shot just outside the circle with a time of 2.63 seconds. Comparing the two guns, if you do the math, I'm about 50% slower with the 380 LCP than I am with the 22. And that all comes down to the split times, the time in between shots. Okay, so the 22 is faster. Big deal. You probably didn't need a demonstration to tell you that. And no, I don't believe those slightly longer split times are likely to mean the difference between winning and losing a deadly force encounter. But those numbers are a direct reflection of just how much more effort is required to run the 380. My grip has to be pretty much perfect if I want to adequately control that gun. I have to consciously think about trigger control. With all that muzzle rise, I have to really verify that my sights are back on target after every shot, and of course, that gun is just really not enjoyable to shoot. It's not a pistol I would voluntarily put a lot of rounds through if I wasn't doing this review. Unfortunately, if I don't practice with this gun for a few weeks, I need to go through at least a full box of ammo to get reacclimated to it before I can shoot anything like what I did in those bill drills. So where does that leave the average LCP owner who most likely practices almost never? The 22 version of this gun starts looking pretty good. Because the recoil is negligible, it requires very little effort to achieve and maintain a decent level of competency with a 22. And of course, with the low cost of ammo, you can get in a ton of practice at a very modest budget. Another option would be to use the 22 as a training aid and carry the 380. Now that sounds great in theory, but in reality, I don't think it's all that helpful. When you boil it down, the hardest part of shooting a pocket 380 is effective recoil management. And that's the one thing you can't really practice with a 22 training pistol. If you spend a day at the range with a 22, and then you go and try and shoot the 380, you are likely to find that the way you've been gripping the gun for the last however many hundreds of rounds is woefully inadequate for controlling the 380. That's why I'm inclined to recommend people just skip the 380 altogether and carry the 22. But I'm not quite ready to do that without some reservations. I've had a few issues with this gun, 3 of them in particular. The first 2 are relatively minor, and then the third one is kind of a big deal. First, the sights were way off. Even at just 7 yards, the best ammo I tried was shooting a couple of inches high and left. Out to 15 and 25 yards, it was off by more like 5 to 7 inches. The elevation changed a lot depending on the ammo, but every load was shooting left a few inches. For most people, if this is happening to your gun, the easiest solution is going to be to just buy a Crimson Trace laser guard. They're not a bad addition to these small guns anyway, and you can just align the laser to wherever your ammo is hitting. I decided to take the riskier path and I filed down the right side of the front sight just a few thousandths of an inch. Then I retouched it with some of that Birchwood Casey aluminum black. That pretty much took care of the windage problem. I could file down the rear sights and fix the elevation, but I probably won't do that until I've had a chance to figure out for sure what kind of ammo runs best in this gun. My second problem is the manual safety. Not the fact that it has one, but the way it's designed. It slides forward and back instead of up and down like most handgun safeties. That in itself is not too difficult to get used to, and it's easy enough to just ignore altogether if you don't want to use it. And that's pretty much what you'll have to do if you're left-handed, since it's a non-ambi safety. The issue I've had is that it's really easy to accidentally engage the safety when I'm racking the slide. Not so much when I'm loading the gun, but if I'm doing a malfunction clearance drill and trying to grab the slide in a hurry, it tends to engage the safety. So I decided to try to use the slingshot method instead of the overhand method. Same thing, I kept grabbing the safety when I would grab the slide. So what I have settled on is rolling the gun over 90 degrees and grabbing the front of the slide like that, so my hand is nowhere near the safety. I'm not sure I can always remember to do that, but it would be ideal if the safety was designed differently or if it wasn't there at all. Actually, what would really be ideal is if I didn't have to worry about clearing malfunctions to begin with. And that's the third problem I've had with this gun. This particular 22 LCP has not been super reliable. And I know that a lot of you are feeling vindicated right now because I conveniently did not mention reliability when I was making my case for a 22 carry gun a minute ago. And that's totally fair. The reason 22 long rifle has not been widely embraced as a self-defense cartridge probably has as much to do with its questionable reliability as it does terminal ballistics. I do think the ammunition has come a long way over the years, and there are some guns that can run 22 very reliably. Some of you might remember the test I did with a Smith & Wesson 1522 where I fired 1,500 rounds in a day with no failures to speak of. My M&P 22 Compact has been extremely reliable for thousands of rounds, but I haven't had the same kind of luck with the LCP. I had a handful of failures to feed in the first 200 rounds, but those seem to have gone away. Right now I've got roughly 800 rounds through this gun, and I'm still having problems with failures to fire. I've counted a total of 19 light primer strikes across 5 different types of ammo. It doesn't seem to like the loose-packed bulk ammo, but that's no surprise. A lot of guns are that way. However, most of the light strikes have been with CCI mini-mags. I've had really good luck with the Federal Gold Medal Target lead round nose. I've shot about 300 rounds of that. I also haven't had any problems with 70 rounds of CCI velocitors. Now that's just one gun out of the thousands Ruger has made, and I don't think these problems are necessarily typical. A few of my friends have also bought LCP 22s, and they've been trying them out the last few weeks. 2 of those friends even bought a pair of them, so not including this one, that's 6 LCPs that I've kind of got range reports from. They have fired something in the neighborhood of 3,000 to 4,000 rounds across those 6 guns. So far, some of the other guns have had failures to fire, but very few, and the majority of those were with the cheap bulk pack ammo. So it seems like this LCP is probably an outlier, but it also might be the case that all of the 22 LCPs could benefit from a slightly stronger hammer spring. Even though I really want to like it, I am reluctant to recommend this as a carry gun, especially for inexperienced shooters who are not likely to vet the gun thoroughly and who might not know how to diagnose potential malfunctions. If you're interested in the LCP 22, I think the best thing to do might be to just wait a little while. It's a brand new model, and teething issues like these are not uncommon. I wouldn't be surprised if Ruger made some minor tweaks to the design over the next year or so in order to iron out some of these issues. If we're really lucky, they will roll out a version in 32 ACP and we will get reduced recoil with centerfire reliability. But I'm not holding my breath on that one. In the meantime, I will probably send this gun back to Ruger to see if they can get it running a little better. If you've got some rounds through a 22 caliber LCP2 light rack, let us know in the comments how it's been working for you.